And so Disney's very protective of that brand. They are very, but
Absolutely.
that's because that brand is so valuable. But you're absolutely right in that it's not a logo. It's not a sign, it's the experience. That's the brand. It's what people say about you and what they think about you. That's really your brand.
Hi, I'm Chris Reynolds, and I'm on a mission to help independent financial advisors build a better business through a remarkable client experience. In this podcast, you're going to learn how to do that from my conversations with the visionaries, the leaders, the independent advisors who are reshaping the future of the financial advice industry. At the end of each episode, you're going to walk away with an actionable idea that you can take and use right now, and it will help you to build a better business today. This is Turning the Page. When you think of companies that truly deliver a great client experience, which one comes to mind? There are some brands out there that take the client experience to a whole other level. One that I use to benchmark, of course, is Disney. People save up a whole year, sometimes more than a whole year, sometimes a couple of years, just to take their family to Disney on an annual basis. And their expectations are high. Right? They want someone who delivers a great experience time after time after time. Right? And I think that one company that we can all point to and we can all sort of say as our sort of beacon of the client experience is Disney. So I ask you, what can we learn in our industry about and from Disney, and how can we implement it into our business? Which brings us to today's guest, one of my favorite speakers, which is Dennis Snow. We were talking earlier, Dennis has spoke before our organization a few times, both to our advisors, both to our staff, and he has a passion for service excellence. He's consulted with organizations right around the world, and he was with Disney for 20 years with the Disney World Corporation, as I have down here. In his last year in Walt Disney World, Dennis's leadership performance was ranked in the top 3% of the company, which is incredible, right? That's pretty big. As I said, we were talking about it was 8 years ago when Dennis actually spoke. So he's been a full-time speaker, a great speaker, trainer, consultant. He has a great website. He has YouTube videos that I've watched on a regular basis. He is the author of the book, Lessons from the Mouse, a guide for applying Disney World's secrets of success to your organization, your career, and your life. Dennis, welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be participating in this. It's great to see you again.
It is. We were saying it's been a long time.
Yes, it has.
And our perspective since the pandemic is we don't really realize time, and it has been longer than I thought since than we've been together before. So, Dennis, great to have you on the show. So, why don't we start with why don't you tell us your story? How did you get here?
Yeah, I'll put it in a nutshell. I was on a break from college. I was going to college in Vermont and thought, hey, during this break, why don't I try and get a job at Disney World? So it was meant to be a 3-month job. I didn't know it was going to be a 20-year career, but came down to Florida, applied and got a job, my very first job with Disney. It was actually a ride that's not there anymore called 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. It was
I remember it.
Submarine type of ride. And that was still the best job I've ever had, I think. And then I got into management and, managed different operations around the company. My first business card, which I wish I had saved because it was the best business card ever. I was the supervisor of Fantasyland. It doesn't get better
Who
than that.
Want that? That's everyone's aspiration.
And then I was with the Disney University, which is the training arm of the company. And we spun off a division called the Disney Institute, which is a place where organizations would come to Disney World to benchmark best practices around service and leadership and so forth. So I managed a division of that for several years. And then I went out on my own and thought, hey, I'd been with the company 20 years. I thought that's a good round number. Let me give this a shot. And so now I've been doing this for 24 years.
Wow, 24 years.
Yeah. It's been, I love it. It's been fantastic of sharing some of the principles of the customer or the client experience and how they can apply to I've worked with a lot of different industries, wealth management organizations, banks, hospitals, even funeral homes. So it's really ran the gamut of organization. Yeah, when they asked me, I thought, that seems like a one-shot deal.
I was going to say that not a lot of repeat customers.
No, they actually, that is their strategy, is repeat customers now, of the families and so forth. So it's been an interesting ride. It's been a great ride, and I've loved every moment, almost every moment of it.
Almost every moment.
Yeah.
There's always something with every particular profession. Sure. But you spent, again, a lot of time, 20 years at Disney, and people that go, talk to people all the time. What's the best experience you've had? They always talk about Disney and their great experience, and they have, they've sort of built this high expectation. So how does Disney continue to match and go above those expectations? What are some examples that they use?
Yeah, it really does. And this is going to sound cliche, but it's true. It really goes back to Walt Disney. His philosophy was the cost versus value. He wasn't really concerned about how much, Disneyland, when it first opened, it cost $1 to get in. It cost $1 to get into the park, and all the other amusement park owners, said you're going to be out of business. Nobody's going to pay that kind of money to get in. And his philosophy was, he really didn't worry about what the people thought about the cost, as long as the value exceeded the cost. And that's really gone on. Now it's $100 and something to nobody would ever accuse Disney of being a nonprofit organization. So part of it is recognizing that as long as the value exceeds the cost, you're probably going to be successful.
Right.
But the other thing that I think was critical, and it was when I worked there, it goes on today, is they always stress with their cast members, they call their employees cast members. We are not selling rides. We're selling an experience, because rides are commodities. You can go right down the road here in Orlando and find places with fabulous rides. And some of them that you could argue are more exciting and thrilling than some of the Disney ones. But they always that's not what we're selling. We're not selling the rides. We're selling the overall experience. So that includes every touch point, every cast member, every interaction. It has to be part of the experience.
Right.
And so that's what you talked about how people save up. Sometimes people literally save for years and years to come down here. Well, that's why. Disney has a few objectives, just like your listeners do. They want to attract new customers or clients. They call them guests at Disney. They want to retain the ones they have and have greater share of wallet. And from a marketing perspective, and I think this is the same in your world, they want current guests to tell other people wonderful things about that's the best marketing strategy, is the stories that you tell when you go back. So every element is designed to enhance that experience. And then the other thing that they try and do to keep people coming back is to add new experiences, whether they be new rides, new shows, new parades, new hotels. And I think that's an important thing, in any industry to be thinking about, is what else can we offer? How else can we add value to our offerings?
Right.
And you think about a financial advisor, how else can we add value to our clients that keep them engaged?
Right. New experiences, new value that you always bring to the table.
Yeah, that's it. That helps them, that improves their situation. So, again, nobody's going to say Disney's a nonprofit, but they work really hard to create that experience that people say, yeah, it was expensive. I talk to a lot of people and they'll say, I was just at Disney World, I don't have any money left. And they just nickel and dime you and blah, 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 blah. We're going back next April.
Exactly. Yeah. And I know people, I know fanatics who go back year after year after year. They've been like 25 times. So why would you go back 25 times? And it's just what you said, Dennis. It's they come up with something new. It's a great experience, but you also knew there's going to be new experiences every time you go.
Since you and I last met, I'm a grandfather now, and taking the grandkids out, seeing it through their eyes, so it's multi-generational, which again, in terms of, a financial advisor, you want that multi-generational business. So you see, people who they came when they were young, then they bring their kids, now they're bringing their grandkids, and that's where the magic is.
That is where the magic is.
Yeah.
One of the things you talk about, and by the way, I steal a lot of stuff
You're
from
welcome
Dennis,
to it.
as I was telling him, is the whole technique called process mapping. And you talk about this into your book. And as I said, it's a technique that we use in our organization now all the time. Tell us a little about process mapping, and why it is so critical to success.
Well, and I call it service mapping just to give it, because sometimes we process map things and we look at it from an internal perspective.
Right.
And I started calling it service mapping because I want people to look at it from the client perspective. So what it is you look at any process. So let's say onboarding a new client into your organization. There's a process to that. And what I find when I work with organizations is that they're often very good at one or two steps of the process, but the rest of it is just kind of, processing somebody through it. So what this does is you look at the entire process from start to finish through the lens of the client, so the onboarding process, step by step through the lens of the client.
Right.
And then you look at what would be an excellent experience at each of those steps. So what you end up with is this template of this is what our experience should be that we deliver to our clients. An example of somebody who, an organization that didn't really look at it from this perspective. There's a pharmacy up the road here.
Right.
And when you walk in, the employee that's working at the entrance will say, "Good morning" or "Good afternoon." That's it. That was the process. That's what they decided. We are going to differentiate ourselves on that moment. The rest of the experience is just mediocre. It's just there's nothing special about it. So the idea is for people to think about the way you do things and think, why can't other organizations do it that way? So you look at each step, and the way I would do it if I were in the financial services world as an advisor is, how can we at each step of these processes, make the client feel valued?
Right.
That's I think where the magic is from start to finish, how can we make the client feel valued? So at Disney, we looked at just about every process, getting the guests from the park back to the hotel at the end of the evening. The bus drivers now, they'll sing Disney, they'll get the kids singing Disney songs, they'll hold trivia contests. As you enter the hotel, there's people welcoming you home, welcome home. You go up to your room, and if you had the stuffed Disney characters in your room, the housekeepers, tucked them into the beds or position them with decks of cards in their hands, like they play cards, whatever. But they've analyzed each step of getting back to the hotel and how can we make it Disney? And it's wonderful. And the other thing I think really makes it work is they get the cast members involved in coming up with these ideas. And I think that's part of the success of the approach.
Well, absolutely. Get all the contingencies, get the eyes from the client, get the guests, the cast members. We actually did this in our own organization. I'll give you one example. You like this, Dennis, you can steal it. We went through, this process mapping, and we said, okay, a client walks into the office. What generally happens? And it's usually just, to your point, reception greets you, so-and-so's busy, sit down, and, we'll be fine. With a bunch of ideas, we put a welcome sign with the client's name on it.
Oh, that's great.
And then we had a menu. So what they, coffee, tea, how they take it, so they could be put into the database after. But I will tell you, as silly as it sounds, to put that welcome sign up, clients would take pictures of it. They would post it on social media. They would post it to themselves and send it to themselves. So that one little thing, and we've had advisors take that to another, where they actually set up personalized parking for the client with a big sign, say, "Park here, Betty." And once again, all signs and stuff. So to what you're saying, it works. It really works.
What that says to me is that you're going to take care of me. that if you're taking care of these little details, you're going to take care of the big details too. That's what I get from those types of things. Those are marvelous examples.
Yeah, no, we've had so much great feedback from that. So with Disney, it's all the cast members, or
Right.
cast members, employees. They're on board with the vision. It's bred into the culture, right? And everyone knows that. So how do they make that happen? How do they enculturate, I guess, is a word I'm looking for. And why is it so important for organizations to really focus on that?
Well, what I first want to say, there's no magic pill. Okay, there's nothing you can sprinkle in the employees' food that makes this happen. It literally starts with the hiring process. One of the things that people used to ask, well, they still ask me, is how do they get their Disney people to be so friendly? Well, they hire friendly people. That's the easy, but it's true. Yeah. It's true. The hiring process is designed to find people that are wired this way. So it starts with the hiring, and they during the hiring process, they model the culture of the organization. So you go to the casting center, you're cast for a role in the show, everything supports, you're treated as a guest throughout the hiring process, because it's modeling the Disney culture throughout, because training begins then. So that's a big part of it, is just getting the right people on board. The second thing is that they train and communicate relentlessly from the onboarding process. It's not just, here's how you do this, here's how you do this. It's here's how you do those things in the Disney way. Here's how you make people feel special. Here's how you make it a magical experience. This is your role in the show. And then it goes on for the rest of your career. Again, a question that I often get is, how long is the training at Disney?
Right.
It's from the moment you say, I'd like to work here, to the moment you leave, because you're surrounded by messages from what's in team meetings, what's on the walls in the break areas, from the one-on-one discussions, all of it, everything is training. And so you're surrounded by a few core messages of this is what we're all about. Right. And we touched on this earlier. They engage their cast members in plussing the experience. Right. And how do we get better at this? How do we get better at this? Because there are fabulous ideas out there that 9 times out of 10 don't cost anything or cost very little to implement. So tapping into that's a big part of engaging people. And then at the end of it all, which sounds negative, but it really isn't, is it's non-negotiable.
You have to do it. Right?
It's part of the experience. And I find, and I remember this from my frontline days, people appreciate that. What makes people nervous is when I don't know what you expect of me. When I'm going to guess, or I'm going to stay off the radar screen. I'm just going to,
or even better, stay quiet.
I don't even want to make eye contact with you. So when you're clear about those non-negotiables, I think people really appreciate that, because I do know what's expected of me, and I know when I didn't do it the way I should have. So if you coach me, I can't argue. I know I didn't do it the way I was supposed to. Right. So hiring, onboarding, relentless training and communication, and finally it being non-negotiable. You've got to put a lot of effort into it. You can never say, okay, we trained them, that's it.
Go away.
You've just got to, look at everything as training. You're offering, in your agency, or in your organization, you're offering a new product. There's an opportunity to train team members on the client experience.
Right.
Here's how we want to present this. Here's how we want to talk about this. Here's how we want to follow up with our clients after we've introduced this. It's looking at everything as training opportunities.
Right. I love it. And it's something that really has to be part of the DNA of an organization. To your point, it starts treating the potential cast member as a client, and taking it from there. And I really love the point about it's non-negotiable. I think that's where a lot of companies slip, is they think that everyone's doing it, they think it's happening, but there's no monitoring process, right? And there's no way. And everyone admits now, service has slipped in the world. So
and there's a reason.
Because it is negotiable. People think in their mind it is negotiable.
So it's more of a suggestion, And Disney's there's not, people think that there's a ton of rules at Disney. There really are not. There's a few key things that are expected of you as a cast member, but they are non-negotiable.
I love that. So, one of the other things that, when you read your book and your materials is how critical it is for the client experience to pay attention to details, to pay attention to little details.
Right.
So maybe give a few examples of how Disney really pays attention to detail to create that sort of wow type of experience that we all expect from them.
Well, one of the things that I would say to the folks on this they're listening to this is there's a concept that I call everything speaks. If you just remember that, every detail is either enhancing the experience or it's detracting from the experience. It's from the quality of the appearance of the office to the tone of voice of somebody that I'm talking to on the phone. So just recognizing everything speaks. So probably the best example that I can give is the number one compliment that Disney gets. Here they build these rides that cost hundreds of millions of dollars, literally. The newer rides there are hundreds of millions of dollars. The number one compliment Disney gets is how clean the place is. Okay, that's number
true.
one. And I'll bet you if we polled the listeners, most of them would probably say the same thing. What impressed you? How clean the place was. So, because that enhances the experience, it's impressive. So yes, the rides have to be great, but all of these other things speak to the quality of the brand. So things like trash cans, which you don't think about. But again, the place, number one compliment is how clean. Well, one of the reasons is they study human behavior, the Disney Imagineers. So in the Magic Kingdom, for example, through their research, they recognize that the average guest will carry a piece of trash 27 paces before they throw it on the ground. Okay. They study stuff like that. I would love that job.
Interesting study.
Yeah. So consequently, the trash cans, you never have to walk more than 27 paces to find a trash can. But we don't want people thinking, there's a trash can, there's a trash can, there's. So they're designed to blend into the environment that they're in until you need one. Okay. And so that's attention to detail. So, there's a trash can, and they throw it away.
Boom. Yeah.
Cast members, one of the non-negotiables is as a employee or cast member, if you're walking through the park and you see a piece of trash on the ground, it is your job to go over and pick it up and throw it away. Again, it's non-negotiable. It doesn't matter if you're, a ride operator or you're the vice president of marketing. It's your job to go over and pick it up and throw it away. So, the result of all of that is, man, that place is spotless. So clean, and that increases the trust factor too, bringing our family down. They have a concept of good show, bad show. So before the park opens, all the delivery trucks, all the maintenance vehicles, all that, they're an hour before the park opens, they're expected to depart. To leave. So that if you're in Frontierland, you wouldn't see a pickup truck, sitting there with some ladders. That would be bad show. A more frightening example is, imagine bringing your kids into the park, and they're excited and they see Cinderella and go over, tug on her dress, and Cinderella turns around, has a cigarette in one hand, a cup of coffee in the other hand, says, "Kid, I'm on break." There might be years of therapy involved. So, those things, whether it's eating, smoking, whatever, that's all done backstage. So that you don't see that, so that when you're on stage, you're show ready. So when you think about that attention to detail, you can almost go back to that service map that I talked about and say, okay, what are the details at each of these steps that would reflect our brand the way I love what you did with the signage and so forth. Those are great examples of details that enhance the experience.
Right. No, and it really does work. As I said, the first time I saw you speak, I was excited, took it all back, and we had a big brainstorming session. And as I said, the first thing that everyone said, that's dumb. No one wants to see their name or confidential. I heard a whole bunch of reasons why it should.
Yeah, sure.
I'll tell you, everybody who implemented it, every client was like,
Yeah.
blown away. Now in this
Yeah.
sort of digital world, now we're looking for different ways to, enhance that experience even
Well, that's
digitally.
important.
Uh,
What's I think is important digitally is that it be a consistent experience, regardless of what channel I'm using in
right.
communicating with you,
Yeah.
whether it's face to face, on the phone, digitally, however we're interacting, it should still feel like your brand.
Exactly. And really, you're really hitting on the big point that Disney has. It's their brand is what people think of them.
Yeah,
It's not just a
that's
logo. It's not, it's not just a mouse. Everyone gets that. People think when you say Disney, they think of an
yeah.
experience. And that's how, if I had to say something to the audience, think of your brand as the experience people have when they deal with you.
A brand is a very fragile thing. A lot of organizations really damage their brand by not thinking about the impact that they're having on the customer experience. And so Disney's very protective of that brand. They are very, but
Absolutely.
that's because that brand is so valuable. But you're absolutely right in that it's not a logo. It's not a sign, it's the experience. That's the brand. It's what people say about you and what they think about you. That's really your brand.
Right. And people don't refer necessarily brands, they refer experiences.
Yeah,
Whether it's
yeah.
Disney, whether it's a great meal, whether it's a great movie, you watch these things because someone said, I had a great experience. I had an emotional experience in some way of doing X. And
Yeah.
that's what that word of mouth is and why it's so
And
important.
there's an emotional component to that. Yeah.
Always, right?
Yeah.
So it's clean. They did this for me. We
Yeah.
got to sing on the ride
They made
on
my
the road
child feel
back.
special. One of the big things now, and my granddaughter, a lot of the children, they'll dress up like Trinity, my granddaughter, dress up as one of the Disney princesses, whether it's Jasmine or
Yeah.
Cinderella, whatever. And the cast members call them by name, by their princess name. Jasmine, I can't believe you're here today. And that costs nothing,
Right.
but it creates a story.
Absolutely.
It
And a
creates
story that you can take away and tell
yeah,
others.
absolutely.
I
Yeah.
love it. So in final, Dennis, what if you had to give a few tips to, people coming in? I think this is universal. It doesn't have to be the wealth management business, but
Mhm.
certainly, that's the majority of our listeners.
Right. Right.
Give me a couple tips that, the takeaways that they
Yeah.
should come away from this show thinking about.
Well, first of all, products and services are commodities. All
Right.
right. So I expect you to be a financial expert.
Right.
Right.
Exactly. You're supposed to do that.
That's the ticket of entry. Right. So yes, that is very important, but that's my baseline expectation is that you're an expert in it. I think, one of the things when I think about financial planning and wealth management from my interactions with
Right.
advisors that I've worked with over the years is one of the things that I think, in terms of the experience is being incredibly responsive.
Right.
When somebody has an issue or a question, one of the great things I love is if somebody sends me an email or texts me a client of mine and I respond, the best thing that I can get back from them is hearing, thanks for getting back to me so quickly. I just love that. So, and anticipating, before they even know they have an issue, to contact a client and say, hey, here's something that's on the radar screen right now. Just want to let you know about it. Or here's an article that I think you should be looking at, whatever. Those are the types of things that just make me feel valued,
Right.
as that responsiveness. We talked about the service mapping a couple of times. That's a really good tool.
Oh, it's a great
and
tool.
I didn't come up with it. I called it service mapping, but
Right.
people call it journey mapping, whatever you want to call it. It's a fabulous way of looking at key processes. And I know if we ask the listeners right now, what are 5 key processes that affect your clients? They could name them right off the top of their head. Well, service map those out and do what we talk. How do we make the client feel valued at each step of these processes? And I think another thing that I would say is meet clients where they are. You have very experienced clients who they know all the jargon, they know all so they know all that. Then you have other clients who this is out of their comfort zone. this is why they're coming to you,
Right.
they're out of their comfort zone. And so we need to meet them where they are in terms of, how we talk to them, how we interact with them, so that it puts them at ease. They trust you versus, the inexperienced client, and we talk in the jargon that they don't understand.
Right.
I just want to end this. I just
Exactly.
want
It's
to
boring.
end this conversation, and because I have no idea what you're talking about. So I think what that goes back to is personalizing the experience. Like I used the example with my granddaughter dressing up as the princess, and they used the name. When I would load people on the rides at 20,000 Leagues, you just have seconds with them. And so I used to read the children's names on the back of their mouse ears. They would get the mouse ears with their name. And so as they would walk, "Hey, Bobby, how are you?" And it would just freak the kid out. How did he know who I was? Well, the parents knew exactly how I did it. But it was that moment of magic that made them feel special, made them feel an individual. So those are the things that I think are really important in a world like yours. And in really any industry.
I was going to say any business.
Yeah.
If you can make your client feel special, feel important, feel like they're wanted and not an annoyance, and actually, to your point, have a great story about any interaction they have with you or your business.
Yeah,
that's something that all of us strive for.
And that incredible responsiveness. I think in your world that's really critical too, because that shows you care. I think nothing shows you care more in a world like yours than how quickly you respond to something. Yeah,
I think that's a good lesson. So as I always do a rant at the end of my my little podcast.
I can't wait.
Certainly my rant is that this is a drum that I've been beating for pretty well most of my career. And certainly, Dennis, I will tell you that you were very helpful in formulating a lot of these ideas that we've implemented in our organization, that I've seen advisors implement in their particular communities, and the response rates that we've got as a result of that have been outstanding. So anyone out there, regardless of the business that you're in, if you're an entrepreneur, take some lessons from the mouse, take lessons from Disney, focus on the experience, see things from the eyes of the client, pay attention to detail, and try to create great stories that are magical, that will help with repeat clients. And I think that, and if you haven't read Dennis's book, read Dennis's book. He's got two of them. I only saw one, but one I hand out all the time, by the way, and I still send people to your website to see your
I appreciate
YouTube videos.
I appreciate that.
But certainly, as I said, this is what every entrepreneur should really aspire to. Everyone needs a sort of a mentor or a North Star, and I think Disney certainly has done that in the client experience space. So, Dennis, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
My pleasure. Yeah, I enjoyed this very much. Great seeing you again. And I really enjoyed the give and take here.
And we're both in Florida, so we got to figure out a time that we're in the same spot at the same time. But Dennis, any final words for everyone before we sign off?
Just, I think the main thing is you're selling an experience. That's really the mindset to come at this with. It's, and every element impacts that experience.
Absolutely. Dennis, thank you so much. We have Dennis Snow. Again, Lessons from the Mouse, great book. And thank you so much for being on. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next podcast. Thanks for joining me on Turning the Page. What did you learn from today's episode? If you follow me on LinkedIn, please drop me a comment there. I'd love to chat with you about it over virtual coffee. Send me a message on LinkedIn, or you can do so at our website. The link's in the show notes. I'm Chris Reynolds, and until next time.